Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast from the Bailey Group. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, president of and partner at the Bailey Group, where we believe better leaders create healthier workplace environments, healthier humans, and a better world. On this show, we explore real stories, practical insights, and honest conversations to help you lead yourself and others better. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. And welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen. Today's guest is Missy Chicre, CEO of Menttium, an organization that spent more than 3 decades helping other organizations develop leaders through innovative mentoring and meaningful connection. Missy has spent her career in leadership, HR, change management, and talent development at organizations like Accenture, Best Buy, and Cargill, before becoming CEO of Menttium. Missy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am delighted to have you. I would love to start with, I think you have such an interesting career, Missy, spanning a lot of different companies, a lot of different roles. What is your earliest memory of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be lots of different things. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a lawyer. I even did a law internship in college. I wanted to work in public relations or advertising. Then I actually thought I was going to become a professor of Hispanic literature and taught for a year at a boarding school out in Boston, then entered a master's program in Hispanic literature and taught at the college level. So I was on that path for a while. But in the meantime, I kept doing internships in various areas of business. So after I completed my master's, I had a little bit of an epiphany that I wanted to step fully into the business world.
When you look back, what were the defining pivots in your journey, Missy?
There's so many. I feel like when I do these interviews, it's such a walk down memory lane and really taking me back to the early days and growing up with a dad who worked in business, who led a very successful business career. And he is still my mentor to this day, but obviously one of my earliest mentors, and watching him not only build a successful career, but also how he cared for people along the way and how he really became known for his humility, his genuine care and knowing of individuals. That was really inspiring and something I got to see from a young age. That is a lesson that I keep with me to this day and really, I think, started to create my passion around how do you help people thrive? How do you help create places and spaces for people to grow into and live up to their full potential? That's kind of a red thread through my whole journey, even though I did it in a lot of different ways. And that's something to this day that's very important to me and something I care deeply about.
It sounds like your dad was such an inspiration. What did that look like, Missy, helping people along the way?
You know, from an early age, I had an interest in learning other languages, learning about other cultures. I studied multiple languages starting at a young age. I was a Spanish major in college. I lived abroad in South America. I always had this spark around learning about other people, learning from people who are different from me, learning from people who have had totally different life experiences, being able to travel and interact with people who are different, being able to learn other languages and customs. That's something I had a passion for from a very young age. So again, when I go back in time, there are a lot of early memories that really come full circle to my life now, which reflecting back it's fun to see that. It's exciting because at the time, you know, they're just little seeds. And then over time, you see how it really does shape your story and shape your future. In fact, I just had the opportunity to go back to Boston this summer with my family. And I grew up in Massachusetts and I haven't been back in a really long time. And I had so many epiphanies while I was there and so many wonderful memories. It was very interesting. There's a quote that has always stuck with me. It goes something like, there's nothing like returning to a place that remains unchanged to see the ways in which you yourself have altered.
Wow.
That quote has just always stuck in my mind. And it kept replaying as I was on this trip with my family, because here I was standing at my childhood home with my own kids. So those are the kinds of things where you go back and really start reflecting on what were some of those early interests, what were some of those early life lessons, and then being able to see how it's shaped who I am today, and also how my path was something I never could have predicted.
You spent your early years in Boston. In what ways did that experience most shape you, Missy?
You know, I think the place where you grow up is always home. So even though I haven't lived there in a really long time, and I do consider Minnesota home because I've been here for more than 20 years now, there's something about the place you grow up and how that shapes you. Kind of the fast moving, say it like you see it type of attitude, kind of go getter, go for it. Again, that kind of fast paced mentality and, being maybe more direct. Those are some of the things that maybe stick with me to this day.
I love that. That directness, I'm sure, has come in handy throughout your life. Was there ever a moment when you realized, this isn't really the right path or the path for me?
I've had a lot of those moments throughout my life. And and it's not negative. I think it's a really positive thing because I think we make choices for a moment in time. It's what fits us in that moment or that stage of life and career. We can only make the best decisions based on the information and experiences we're having in that moment. People often ask me, is there something you would go back and do differently? Or what would you change? Or do you have any regrets? Say, I don't, because I had to go through all the things I went through the way I did to become the person I am now. We need those life experiences to get perspective, to build resilience, to really think about what's important to us and what our values are. So I think for me, I had a lot of different interests. I always loved school. I always loved learning. My brother likes to joke that it's funny. He remembers things sometimes different than how I remember them. But, when you're little and you have a snow day and everyone's so excited to get school off, and he always jokes that I would be upset when we had a snow day because I didn't want to miss out on school. I don't know if that's totally true, but I always did have a love of learning. And I always enjoyed school. So that's probably what kept me on an academic path and kind of moving into academia, thinking I would become a professor. At the same time, having so many role models in my life in the business world and being able to get exposed to that as well through different internships, especially once I got to college, opened up another world of possibilities. So I kind of felt like I was one foot in each. And then I did a really interesting internship the summer between my first and second year of grad school, working at Best Buy and working with some of the border stores and doing an analysis on that. So it was a really interesting way to combine a lot of my different passions. And it really helped me start thinking about what could a business career look like that also is aligned to my personal values and purpose. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we all really want, is we want to live out our purpose. And our job is one way to do that. So when you can combine what you're doing for work and what you're actually getting paid for with your purpose and values, that's the sweet spot. That's absolutely the sweet spot.
Yeah. You've got this through line that you talked about earlier about helping people and this curiosity about people that I've heard as you've talked about some of these different roles you're in has really been present. What about people has always fascinated you, Missy?
I think I'm just a very curious person. I love learning about people's stories. I love learning about what makes people tick, what gets them excited, what gets them jazzed, what they care about. And I think people are fascinating. That authentic human connection is something I care so deeply about. I've always been someone who builds really strong relationships, who is a connector. Even from a young age, even when I was in school, everyone would call me and say, what are we doing tonight? And then I would make a plan and call 30 people back, right? I didn't have a cell phone to do a group text, right? So then I'd call everybody back individually and make the plan. Or I'd bring people together who didn't know each other. And then by the end, they'd all be best friends. And I still do that to this day. And I think a lot of it stems from a curiosity and a passion for building and nurturing relationships.
Was there a point in your career when you first realized that helping people grow was your purpose, was your life's work?
When I started at Accenture, I had a lot of really amazing opportunities to build my business acumen and to get really strong experience in the business world. I built a really strong foundation and worked on some really excellent projects with really smart people. Then when I went over to Best Buy, my first role was in diversity and inclusion. And again, you see the connection there with people and again, creating inclusive environments. I think that role is where I really was able to articulate my passion for creating places and spaces for people to be themselves, for people to be authentic, for people to, live out their dreams and their version of success. I think that job and that role was really the time that helped me solidify that passion for me, and that I was able to take the skills that I built earlier on in things like change management and people development to not only have the passion for it, but then be able to put it into practice.
That's incredible. I want to switch gears a little bit because one part of your story really inspires me, Missy. You became a mother just as your career was taking off. What was happening for you at that time, and how did that identity shift really impact sort of your trajectory?
It impacted me a lot. And I think it's one of those things where until you're in it, you don't know how it will impact you or not. Everybody's unique and everybody has their own unique journey and story. For me, it was really at the time when my daughter, who's about to be 16, was a toddler, and I was getting these opportunities for leadership and to grow in my career and sort of everything on paper I had been working so hard for and aspiring to, when I really started to feel some tension between my career aspirations and having the time and space to be the mom I wanted to be, having, increasing levels of responsibility and stress and travel and all of those things coming together amongst many other factors. I really had a period that I was struggling, honestly, to figure out what is my version of success? What do I want? Are the things that I wanted before the things I still want today? Those are hard questions to ask, and they're definitely a little destabilizing because for me, I think I was on this track, from a young age where, high achieving, work hard, get good grades, go to a great college, get a good job, work hard, get promoted, kind of that ladder mentality and a vision of success that was very much defined by professional success and sort of those external accolades. So for me, this period of time was definitely a period of introspection to think about some of the shifts I was going through personally. Like, yes, my career is really important to me and I love doing something I care about. I love making a difference and an impact. I really appreciate and value having a career. And is that going to look different for me now? Is the model of success I've always told myself still true today? I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, where in different seasons of life and different stages of life and career, your values, your priorities, they shift. And that's okay. But it takes a little bit of courage sometimes, I think, especially earlier on, to accept that those things are happening and to be okay with it, because it really can be a little bit of an existential crisis of, I thought this whole list of things were the most important things to me. And now I'm questioning that. And that was difficult. That was definitely difficult for me. It inspired me though, and it gave me permission to think differently about success. It also allowed me to connect with others in a really meaningful way, to learn that other people were going through a similar type of journey and reflection. So that was definitely a big pivot point for me. And I actually made a lot of different life and career decisions that I never thought I would make. Part of the challenge for me at that time was really rewriting the stories I was writing in my head. I had a lot of fear. I didn't want to look like I wasn't motivated. I didn't want to appear that I was no longer driven. I didn't want to look like a failure, to be honest. So all of those things got in the way of getting to the point of clarity and being able to tell myself that making different decisions or doing things differently than I thought I would was not a sign of failure. It was a sign of growth, a sign of agency, a sign of autonomy where I'm in the driver's seat here. I get to design the life I want. I didn't have that clarity at the time. This was a long time ago. It took me a while to get there and have a lot more life experiences, as well as some really incredible mentors along the way, because at the end of the day, we get just this one life and we each have to decide how we want to live it.
That is so powerful. I love how you use the word agency. Was there a moment in that process, Missy, where you really realized you had more agency than you might have previously assumed?
Definitely, because I think we get on a track and we feel like we have to stay on that track. Nobody's telling us we have to, but there's a system in place. There's the unwritten rules and expectations. And then of course, everything we tell ourselves. So I think for me, it was going through some of the hard. And then honestly, having someone who turned into one of my most influential and meaningful mentors create space for me to have an honest dialogue about everything I was feeling, what I was struggling with, what my hopes and dreams are, what was getting in the way. And that was instrumental for me in that moment. And I think what was so powerful when I reflect back is this was an HR leader. She was not my mentor at the time. We knew each other, but not well. But I was definitely working through all of the things we're discussing. And she kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Can we talk? Can we meet?" And she opened her door. And not only her door, she opened her heart to me. And it literally made all the difference. Like, I would not be where I am today without her. Susan Bees, I'll give her a shout out.
Yeah.
She reached out to me at a time that was really hard, and being able to honestly take a breath and feel emotionally safe and comfortable and trusting enough to talk about what I was working through with somebody else was so powerful. And what was also so meaningful about it is that it gave her an opportunity to share her story with me. I realized I was making a lot of assumptions about how people become successful. So by her opening up and sharing her journey with me that was also not conventional or typical, it gave me permission to think about things differently. It gave me a model of someone to look up to and say, okay, it doesn't have to look like this straight line and this ladder. There's lots of ways to get to different versions of success. So that was definitely a major, not only pivot point, but just period of growth for me personally, and being able to kind of build the muscle of giving myself permission to feel the things I was feeling and to make different decisions for myself.
So powerful. You talked about how your definition of success really evolved during that season. What did it evolve from and what did it evolve to?
It was really interesting because during this time that I'm talking about, I ended up taking a short leave of absence. And it's very interesting. When I met people during that time period who didn't know me before, and they would ask me, "Oh, what do you do?" I struggled with how to answer that because I did not feel comfortable because of the mental model I had always had and the version of success I had always written. I felt really uncomfortable saying, "I'm at home with my daughter right now," or "I'm not working outside the home right now." That felt very uncomfortable because so much of my identity had been tied to either academic or professional success. That was definitely an aha of just feeling that discomfort and then asking myself, why does that make you uncomfortable to say that? Or to feel like I had to qualify, like, I'm not working right now, but I'm just on a short leave and then I'm going back. I felt like I had to explain myself, but it was more about me than the other people, of course. So I think I moved from, again, that vision of success is defined by these external things that we say as a society are important, your title, your role, your company, your contributions, to how do I want to shape my life? Because I'm the one who has to live it. What is my purpose? What are my values? Where do I feel most fulfilled? How can I contribute in a way that's meaningful and fill my life with multiple things that are important to me? Because in addition to work, which I care deeply about, I also care deeply about my family. I care deeply about my friends. I care deeply about my community and trying to make it better. So I think I went from the sort of traditional model of success and looking for that external recognition to how am I going to be most fulfilled for me, Missy, and what makes me happy? What drives me personally, professionally? How do I live out my purpose in a way that feels meaningful and aligned with my values?
I love that. I know one of the things you're really passionate about is living a values-aligned life. Where does that come from, Missy?
A couple of places when we talk about what are some of those pivot points or those experiences that really shifted thinking, I was able to go through an internal coactive coaching program when I was at Cargill. It was a very powerful experience, and it's really space to do the self-work, to do the reflection. It's really based on this premise of, you're in the coaching world. You are creative, resourceful, and whole. You kind of have it within yourself to figure out your path and to make the decisions that are going to be most aligned with your purpose and values. So I was going through that experience, which was very powerful and gave me space to do some of that work and that self-reflection. So I was able to really articulate and define my values, which often we don't take the time to do because we're just doing the thing, right? We're doing the job, we're getting through our day, but being able to step away from the day to day and actually do that work is really, really important. And then the other thing is, I know I mentioned this when we talked earlier, my dad always talked about and still talks about the value chain. We all have a value chain. And again, it can shift over time and at different moments in life. But at the end of the day, it's what is your value chain? What are those priorities? What are those top values? And if you make decisions in alignment with those values, you really can't go wrong because it's your North Star. And not only understanding your own value chain, but then those around you, the value chain of people on your team, the value chain of your family, because that's what motivates people. That's what helps people be at their best is when they're living in alignment with their values. But it starts with yourself. And again, taking the time and space away from the day-to-day to get really clear on what those values are.
So you go through this powerful season of introspection, you gain clarity, you're really empowered to live a more values-aligned life. What are your next steps, Missy?
Interestingly, as part of this process and journey, I started reaching out to people I respect, people I admire, people who are doing work in spaces that matter to me. And, everyone talks about networking and making sure you have, your board of directors and your village. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to nurture relationships always, not just when you're looking for your next job or when you need a favor, when you need help with something, because that village is going to be there for you, not only in seasons of transition, but also when you need advice, when you need guidance, when you need someone you can just talk with honestly and vulnerably. And often when we're in our day-to-day, we're so busy, right? Everybody's busy. We don't necessarily take the time to nurture those relationships always. And so I can't stress enough when there's people you build relationships with, there's people you respect and admire, stay connected, keep those relationships going, even if it's just a quick check-in. Like I'll get a text from, someone I worked with years ago who I don't talk to every day, but even just getting that quick text of, hey, I was just thinking about you and I wanted to check in. That's meaningful. So keeping those relationships going, can't even stress enough how important it is to do that. And I was able to take some time to connect in with my network and people I hadn't talked to in a while. And that was powerful because every conversation, every coffee led to somebody else. People were so gracious with their own networks and communities to say, okay, now after talking, there are 3 other people I want to introduce you to. And then they would make those intros, right? And one coffee led to another, led me to Lynn Sontag, who's the owner of Menttium. So you just never know where those relationships are going to lead. And I think we all know that awesome people also have awesome people in their networks.
That is so true. And people are often way more generous than we might ever assume them to be.
100%.
So you meet Lynn. What was your first impression of Lynn?
I was so excited to meet Lynn because I knew about Menttium and I knew that Menttium had always been, women founded, women owned, women led with, again, doing work that's mission driven. And it's really about enriching lives and strengthening organizations. And how do we do that? It's through mentoring, which is authentic human connection. So the mission of Menttium really spoke to me. And Menttium, for the first 17 years of the business, was focused on mentoring for high potential women. So in addition to, now having programs for all key talent, and of course the company has grown and evolved since that time, that piece around developing and advancing women was certainly and is, something that's a core value. So I just resonated with the mission, with the history. So I was really excited to learn more. I also had worked in big corporate my whole career and was really looking to make a change. I really wanted to get experience working inside a small company, again, with that mission and purpose that was so clear and so much aligned with my values. So it was very exciting. And again, we just met informally to start and it turned into another conversation. And then where Lynn was looking to grow and evolve the business and the skill set that I could provide and what I was looking for, it was a great match at a great timing. And so she brought me on board back in 2017.
What surprised you most about working all of your career in these large global organizations to being in a mighty but small organization?
The team, the passion, the performance for the mission, being able to wear lots of hats and be creative. I absolutely love that. No 2 days are the same. Being able to add value in different ways, move quickly. I love that about, small business where you can move quickly and be agile. And I think just the openness of Lynn and the team to try new things because we all know, right, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome. And Menttium's been around a long time, which is absolutely incredible. The number of people Menttium has been able to impact through mentoring, and the world is also evolving pretty dramatically around us. So being able to be creative, roll up our sleeves, collaborate with an awesome team of people, as well as an incredible network of mentors around the world, it's amazing. It's very humbling.
Wow. Switching gears a little bit here, you've spent your career helping organizations develop really effective leaders, Missy. In your experience, what's the biggest misconception we as organizations have about developing people?
I think one thing that's so critical, and again, coming from a career in HR before I even got to Menttium, is development has to happen consistently. Investing in people is never the wrong thing to do. In fact, we all say people are your greatest asset. People are your greatest asset, period. And while the world is shifting dramatically around AI and technology, at the end of the day, nothing replaces authentic human connection. Nothing replaces human-centered leadership. And so I think for people, as we get so enamored with the amazing things we can do, not losing sight of how critical it is to have humans who care, who think, who sense, who judge, who are curious, who have empathy. I think empathy is such an important leadership skill and competency. And I think in the past, some of those skills were thought of as the fluffy soft skills. They're not. I mean, there's so much data and research around why these skills are no longer the soft skills, but actually critical leadership competencies. So I think, making sure, especially as organizations go through disruption, constant change, volatility, investing in people will always pay off.
What separates organizations that truly understand the importance of developing people and invest in that from those that simply talk about it?
I mean, I think as with anything in life, it's talk only gets you so far. That model of express, model, reinforce. That's an important loop. So you can express all you want, but if you don't model the actions and behaviors and then reinforce it over time, it really doesn't take you anywhere, right? It just at the end of the day becomes the talk track. So for leaders to not only talk, but then back up their talk with the behaviors and actions consistently and over time, that's very critical.
Missy, as CEO of a successful growing organization, what are the things that you find yourself focusing on in this season?
I think the amount of change, disruption, and volatility is unlike anything we've ever seen. And I've talked with lots of leaders who have been around a long time, and something feels very different about this period we're in right now. So as a leader, as a CEO, there's that constant question of what's the next big thing? Because it feels like every day, every week, there's some other big unprecedented event we weren't expecting. So I think that mentality of long-term planning, what are we doing 5 years from now? It doesn't work in today's environment. So being able, like, how do we stay agile? How do we stay flexible? How do we, yes, have a plan and priorities and be flexible enough to be okay that those might change? There's no playbook, and any leader you talk to in any function or role will say the same thing. We are faced with unprecedented realities, and we're doing the best we can with the information we have and the awesome teams of people around us. So what are the things I think about or that keep me up at night? It's what's going to be that next big thing? How do we react with clarity and vision while also staying flexible? How do I take care of my team? How do I make sure we're taking care of our clients and all of our mentees and mentors with the work that we do, which again is really about enriching lives and strengthening organizations? How else can we be adding value to people? Because we know that a lot of people are struggling. We know people are stressed. We know that people are burnt out. We know that people's plates are overflowing. So how do we, as experts in this area of mentoring and being in the space of leadership development for more than 3 decades, how do we take our thought leadership and continue to add value to our community? That's really important to us because we know that it's hard. We also know that the world is changing so dramatically. So in addition to leaders being responsible for delivering business results and teams of people, they're also managing a lot of other things in their life that may be hard, whether it's with children, with aging parents, with something in their community, with their own health. It feels like a time when people need community more than ever, and they need that genuine care. And I know these are things we don't always talk about in the realm of leadership and developing leaders for the future, but I think leading with heart and vulnerability go a very long way. And those leaders who are open and who create space for people to come as they are the leaders that are going to see the most success. And, we often say at Menttium that mentors provide hope and stability in times of disruption. And we see that over and over and over again. And those who are going through a mentoring experience, who have a mentor in their corner during these times, are seeing the benefit tenfold, because it's not only about career success and developing leadership competencies, it's whole person mentoring. And we all show up as we are. With anything hard that happened in the morning, we show up to that meeting in the afternoon. And so how do you rally people around delivering business results and delivering high performance?
So good. How do you take care of yourself, Missy? You've got such a full life. I know you love your work, you love your organization, you love being a mom, you love your family. What does self-care look like for Missy?
It's funny. I was just talking about this with someone this morning because I get asked that question a lot, and there are different things. And I think we often hear a lot of similar responses, right, around exercise and sleep and diet and all of those things. And all of those things, yes, are important. And I would say the single most important thing I do for self-care is I surround myself with people who lift me up, and I build networks, relationships, and friendships of people who bring out the best in me, who allow me to be myself, who give me advice and support when I need it, who cheer me on and celebrate my successes when I need it. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier about I've always been curious and love building and nurturing relationships. So the best way that I kind of take care of myself is surrounding myself with awesome humans who bring out the best in me and want the best in me, and vice versa, and making time and space to do that. So whether it's a walk with a friend, a coffee with a group of awesome, colleagues, getting together with a network of people I've met through a work event, those are the things that really sustain me and give me energy.
It's amazing how you've intentionally found that to be true about yourself, and then very intentionally created that in droves, it sounds like, throughout your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel really blessed to have an awesome community of people around me.
What is something you know now that your younger self needed to hear?
I always talk about the book, The Art of Possibility by Ben Zander. Absolutely love that book. I have had an opportunity to hear him speak a couple of times. I think hearing earlier on, just be open to what's possible. In his book, he talks a lot about the world of measurement versus the world of possibility. And it kind of goes back to that early model and vision of success versus, what I've realized to be true through my own experiences. When we open ourselves up to possibility, possibilities tend to show up. So I think getting out of our own way sometimes and being able to look bigger and broader and be okay that it's sometimes ambiguous and unknown, I think that would have been a lesson that maybe I wasn't ready to hear it earlier, but I think starting to hear that and see that modeled through other people would have been helpful early on to just be okay that it's not all going to be in a perfect package bow and being open to what life is going to bring, because life brings lots of surprises and things that we don't plan for or plan on. So that mindset of possibility is very powerful.
Incredible. Thank you, Missy, for sharing your story so openly. I know it certainly has provided hope and stability, at least for me, in this season. And so I appreciate your generosity.
Thank you. I appreciate you and this opportunity.
And thank you to our listeners. Join us next week for another episode of Leadership Matters. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Matters. If today's episode resonated with you, would you do me a favor and share it with someone you care about? To learn more about the work the Bailey Group is doing in the world, check us out at thebaileygroup.com or follow us over on LinkedIn. We love sharing useful articles, helpful resources, and valuable tools to help you expand your leadership capacity. Like and subscribe, and join us next time for more honest conversations.